As the corporate sector evolves, Burka Africa remains committed to cultivating world-class thought leaders and providing innovative, human-centered solutions that shape a prosperous future for African governments and businesses. About Burka Africa. Burka Africa is a platform that houses expert consultants from across the African sub-region that provide strategic sustainable leadership, organizational development, corporate governance, coaching, and ESG advisory services to businesses and African governments. Burka's strategic thrust is to strengthen strategic alignment for Africa's development by bridging the gap between governments, businesses, and industry experts for leadership and business solutions, serving as a center for excellence and transformative leadership insights in Africa. The consortium is dedicated to shaping ethical, visionary, productive, and sustainable businesses and leadership across Africa. Through advisory, training, and coaching, Burka supports executives, managers, and organizations in achieving excellence, growth, and sustainable impact. Visit our website www.burkafrica.com for more information.
Hi, I am Austin Game, and I will be listening to Growth and Grind Africa, the transformative talk show, every Thursday on Unique FM at 5 to 6 p.m. Let's learn, grow, transform Africa. Growth and Grind Africa. Live it, learn it, lead it. You are welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, Africa. It's morning here in Accra, Ghana, and it's 9 o'clock. It's time for our monthly Burka Africa Leadership Dialogue webinar. Today, we are going to talk about something very interesting which concerns all institutions, and that is from vision to legacy, building institutions that outlast leaders. Today, we are going to explore critical dimensions of Africa's development journey, how institutions can endure and thrive beyond the tenure of visionary leaders to ensure sustainable progress. We are honored to have with us distinguished personalities who are driving this conversation in their various respective countries. First of all, we have Dr. Alfred Brima, the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Directors of Ghana, an esteemed professional body championing director professionalism and sound corporate governance across Ghana. Mr. Brima, or Dr. Brima, has played a pivotal role in strengthening governance standards that serve as a foundation for institutional resilience. Joining Dr. Brima is Mrs. Amy Green from Institute of Directors, Sierra Leone, the director of the Institute of Directors, Sierra Leone, who brings deep insight into the governance challenges and reforms within the Sierra Leonean context and also the broader sub-Saharan African context. Today, they will reflect on how African institutions can build strong and effective governance frameworks or systems that outlast their founding leaders. Join me in welcoming our distinguished speakers as we embark on this pivotal conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to Burka Africa.
Thank you.
Great. Dr. Brima, good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
It's good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And all the way from Sierra Leone, let's welcome Mrs. Green. So you can hear me. Good morning. Okay, while we wait for Mrs. Green to join us, we can kickstart the conversation and then she will join us with her contribution as well. So today, Dr. Bremo, today we are going to talk as the topic speaks to for itself, from vision to legacy, building institutions that outlast leaders. So if you're treating this topic, then it means that there is a problem with regards to the foundations upon which institutions are built. So my first question would be, why do many African institutions lose momentum and struggle to sustain progress after their visionary leaders exit?
Well, thank you, Dr. Senyo. I am glad to be here to take part in this extremely important dialogue. Let me start responding to your question by saying that, look here, many African institutions struggle to maintain progress after leadership transition, and it's largely driven by systemic gaps. And these systemic gaps can be classified into inadequate adaptive leadership, i.e., potential weakness of the incoming leaders, i.e., bordering on attitude, bordering on capacity, and indeed, the leaders who are leaving deliberate plans not to nurture and grow future leaders. Clearly, I mean, if you have an issue like this, hitting the ground running and therefore moving the organization from the level that he or she is inheriting to the next level becomes a challenge. In addition to that, every organization has a culture, and if the culture is rigid, I mean, for example, I mean, this is how we do things here. You can't change it. It has to be the case. It clearly makes it very difficult for a person who is landing on the job to, as it were, settle in within the transition period and hit the ground running. I think the other area that one needs to be looking at is how adequately resourced is the institution at the time the takeover is taking place. If it is not adequately resourced, I mean, clearly, there will be issues. And I'm basically looking at areas like technological infrastructure, financial management, digital marketing, etc. Last but not the least, before I summarize quickly on this subject matter, is resistance. Now, here I want to pick it up under two main areas. Some new leaders come in, they come in not with the right attitude, they step in with a preset mind, and basically with a conclusion that nothing is working. So I'm going to change everything. Now, once that happens, I mean, they close their minds. They are not even ready to listen to the person handing over to them. And of course, that clearly creates an issue. Now, in our African context in particular, lots of leaders, especially the charismatic ones, clearly try to hang on to power for as long as they can. And because they are strong individuals, it is usually difficult to move them away. And when the system catches up with them and says, move on, then there's a gap. I mean, they actually deliberately refuse to nurture and grow their successors, and that clearly becomes a problem. Now, and that then moved on quickly to say that, look here, so basically for such an individual, there will be no structured succession planning, and therefore the transition framework will be weak. Documentation may not be good, and therefore institutional memory may not be available and may be lost because that individual is gone. And basically, in some cases, depending on the organization, if it is a public organization, issues of political interference due to changes in leadership and reset priorities, etc. So look here, it all boils down to challenges, as I indicated in the introductory conversation, emanating from systemic gaps. And the only way we can deal with these things is to put in place a structured approach to basically make sure that things are moving well. And I believe the other topics that we're going to cover will be dealing with those areas. Thank you.
Great. So you gave an in-depth exposition on the subject matter, which I hear you say talked about systemic gaps or systemic weakness. And I just want to plunge in a bit deeper into these systemic weaknesses. So first of all, is it that I believe all institutions in Ghana, in Africa, in Ghana, and in Sierra Leone, all the world have boards. Okay, so how can boards or governance bodies of institutional resilience, so that even if the leader is charismatic, and then because of the governance system in place, it could kind of like be resilient enough to put things into perspective before the so-called charismatic leaders, to see sense and reason into why but
yes.
Yeah. So
yes, I mean,
how can boards and governance bodies be strengthened to act as guardians?
Thank you. I mean, I knew I set the trap for myself, but I think I'm adequately prepared to deal with this one. Basically, I mean, the role of boards and governance structures is oversight. And oversight focusing on strategy and therefore what I would call strategic continuity. So first step is basically, for me, is for the board and governance structures to institutionalize strategic continuity and reduce over-dependence on individuals. And the first step is about developing a robust governance framework which clearly defines roles and responsibilities, clearly establishes committees, for example, audit, risk and remuneration committees, HR committees, etc. And the whole idea of having those committees is for them to focus on the key areas. I mean, this particular area we are talking about is human resources. I mean, the Human Resources and Ethics Committee to focus on it and basically institutionalize a long-term planning system for succession within the organization. And basically that will allow for what I would call ongoing, if you like, quarterly reviews of such plans, and therefore embedding the processes that will guarantee the non-dependence on individuals. Now, within that as well is about directing management to develop what I would call policies, comprehensive ones, and procedures that will guide operations. Once you have these policies and procedures in place, the issue of continuity does not become an issue. I mean, they are there. They are being practiced, and therefore whoever comes in plugs into it. The only drawback or spanner that I would throw in the works of this area is the attitude of the person coming in. Are you coming in with an open mindset? Are you coming in with a closed one and basically writing off everything that is there? And I believe that ladies and gentlemen will recognize this. I mean, in Ghana, the leadership continuity, it's a problem. The new leaders come in, and the first step is to say, everything is out of the window and I'm going to do everything anew. Reinventing the wheel is a now. I think. Yeah. Yes, please.
So then, yes, there are issues. There are some instances where all these boards, I mean, all these committees you made mention of, rightly so, are present, are in existence. I mean, on the document, on paper, they are in existence, but in actual practice, it looks like the director, the overall director, kind of um, it's a one-man show. You would have all these, yeah, it's a one-man show. And rightly so, because especially in the public sector, you have all these regulatory bodies.
Yeah.
When you come for inspection, when you come for compliance, they'll show you all the documentation. But in actual practice, I mean, all these committees have to dance to the tune of, of the powers that be. So, how then do you really? I mean, you can share your personal experience as to how maybe um, these committees you've mentioned can not rebel or put up a coup d'etat, but then at least find a way of putting things in place to make the powers that be come to reason. Is this something that is feasible, or I am overstretching my imagination?
Well, I think you're not overstretching anything. I mean, good governance practice, good board dynamics, I mean, requires that each member of the board has a fair share. I mean, his voice is listened to, and his contributions. I mean, I also listen to, and the principal role of the chair is basically to drive that. I mean, drive successive and very good inclusivity in board discussions. Now, you're absolutely right. It happens in some of the organizations, but let me say that I'm a board chair of the Bento Oil Palm Plantations, and which is part of the Wilma Global Group. I think, I mean, as a board chair, every single what I would call board meeting is chaired on the basis of a board charter that we have in place, which defines all the key rules of how we should relate, how we should act, etc. Now, if you go to the government sector, the SOEs, the first question is, the people who are being appointed as chairs of the board, are they adequately prepared for those positions? The other side of it is the people who are also being made members of the board. Are they people of integrity? Are they people who are adequately prepared for the job? I'm afraid if they are not, and if the board chair is a person not of any high level of integrity, then the situation that you described will happen. So from where I sit, I think that recruiting the board chair, recruiting the board members and appointing them is a serious exercise. It should be taken seriously. There should be a structured approach to it. There should be clear, what I would call, requirement checklist as to who can qualify to be on the board. And in particular, membership of the Institute of Directors could be one of the key things that I would be recommending. The second thing is that once the board members are brought on board, they should also be trained to understand what their roles and responsibilities are. For example, Act 992 makes board non-performance, board connivance, board inaction, which results in liabilities for the organization, sanctionable, jailable offense. We need to train them. We need to let them understand that this is not just a job for the boys. There is a risk downstream. And if we get that message out quite strongly, if we engage with government, which we are doing, to as it were, make available a list of trained directors, I mean, for them to consider as part of the pool that they are looking at, I think this issue would be solved. Thank you.
Great. So it's good you are a board chair of the oil company, and so this one you are speaking out of facts, what is practicable from practice. Um, more often we see a lot of global companies having franchise or branches or in other countries, and then such companies, example, I'll just name a few, just Coca-Cola, Nestle, they have outlived their initial founders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why is it that in Africa, most African countries, we don't have that longevity? So you always see a company at best 20 years. Then after 20 years, you no longer hear of that company again. Is there, how important is succession planning?
Absolutely key, Senor. And let me say that the lifeline of any venture depends on the quality and the sustainability of human resources. Let's be clear. You can have the best machines on this earth. You can have the largest cash pool on this earth. If you don't have the right human resources, forget it. And so, I mean, for me, I think it is a very critical area. There are nuances as far as succession planning is concerned between the public and the private sector. And it is largely driven by the object of business, right? Now, I mean, when you basically take the public sector, I mean, the focus is usually on continuity and stability. And here it is about prioritizing succession planning and to basically ensure continuity and the stability of governance. Because the service delivery mandate of government is long term, and by the nature of it, they need to guarantee that at any point in time there is somebody who will step into the shoes of the previous person and deliver at a very good standard. Now, if you take the public sector as well, in terms of determining who should be in a position, diversity is a key factor, community representation is a key factor. And again, I mean, having worked with ECOWAS institutions for more than 15 years, it is absolutely clear that when you are recruiting staff, you have to have a regional balance. And that once you are looking at regional balance, on some occasions, I mean, you may have to sacrifice the absolute best to probably take the next best or the next third best. This is a focus for what I would call the public sector. For the public sector, as I did indicate, succession planning is more of a long-term thing, and it is viewed on that basis, considering the impact of leadership transition on the services and policy implementation. You would remember that not just Ghana, but quite a number of the ECOWAS member states, there has always been a cry and complaint that 4 years is too short. And that is, again, that, I mean, first year settling in, second and third year working, 4-year election. So effectively only two years of work. Now, government considers this in its succession planning. And finally, as far as government is concerned, I mean, knowledge management is another one. As far as the private sector is concerned, it's a competitive approach. They would want to have the right person. So they have systems in place to, as it were, identify and groom and therefore prepare them in readiness for the next position. I mean, I worked for Unilever for 21 years, so I'm very familiar with this. That is what you call the listing system, and this debt listing system identifies people as high flyers, and that based on specific end goals, i.e. general management, i.e. Technical expertise as finance director or whatever. And that then informs the training and grooming program, a mentoring program that will place. So successors are identified. It is Mr. Senyo. He has the capacity. He can rise up to this level, and we're preparing him for it. This, as against the private sector, is major difference. That focus on the private sector is profit, target in terms of succession planning is individuals. It is driven by performance, not by any representation, and therefore, basically that's it. Now, for both institutions, I mean, talent development for future roles is key, and conducting risk assessments to determine critical positions and potential gaps is one of the key things that they do. Putting in place programs for leadership development, knowledge transfer, etc., are key for all. So let me basically conclude by saying that look here, succession planning is the lifeline for any organization. If it doesn't exist, disaster is at the end. And the reason why disaster is at the end is because you won't groom, grow, nurture, and promote people into positions. You always be looking out to bring people in. That in itself has changed management issues. Thank you.
Right. So, Mrs. Green, thank you for joining us. So just I hope you've been following the conversation, and so just a quick one: how regarding the Sierra Leonean context, how has leadership development models? How can leadership development models be reoriented to prioritize robust systems over individual personalities? In other words, how can we develop models that outlive individuals? You can take the Sierra Leonean context as a background to throw more light on this question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Thank you. I was going in and out, so I wasn't able to follow everything. However, I will give my own take on the Sierra Leonean context. Maybe it will align with what Dr. Breimer has said. I don't know. But here it is. It's first of all in Sierra Leone, we have these personality cults, and that is something we need to move away from. Then this is easier said than done, because but if we have the right mindset, if we create the right mindset, then that becomes vital. It encourages open and frank discussions. It rewards merit. Directors and boards can shape culture by rewarding team performance, not just individual effort. Leadership training should emphasize ethics, governance, and accountability, which shifts the focus from who leads to how and what makes the system work. So at the Institute of Directors, we're training directors to set the tone at the top of the organization and let it cascade all the way down. Because we believe this will ensure that the institution, not the individual, becomes the hero. Policies, and practices must be reviewed regularly to determine their effectiveness and fitness for purpose. And we also encourage boards of parastatals and other government institutions, as well as the private sector. And when we talk about the private sector, we shouldn't forget the family-owned business, so that they make sure the directors are trained and understand the implications of not planning for succession. They need to take the leadership in that, because if you leave it to management, it won't be done. So it has to be their baby. They have to own it.
Great. Great. So, in the case of Sierra Leone, are there how strict or how enforceable are regulatory bodies with regards to how companies are managed or how companies are run? I'm talking about, are there governance policies, things in place that make sure that companies or heads in such authorities are complying. For example, in the case of Ghana, we have the Companies Act. Okay, that one way or the other spells out clearly what the rules are in running a company. I'm thinking of Sierra Leone.
We do have rules, we have regulations, but having rules and regulations that are not adhered to and are not enforced is practically not having any. We do have Companies Act. We had Corporate Affairs Commission, and I was one of the directors on that board. And we had regulations. We had rules for how companies should perform, how they should report on their activities on a regular basis. But then there were so many who did not conform to this, and the penalties for not conforming, well, in the case of the Corporate Affairs Commission, they had penalties. They would fine, and if you were consistent in not reporting, you would be struck off. But in general, most of the other regulations and policies, if they're not adhered to, there's nothing strong that forces an organization to adhere to the policy. So if they default or if they don't comply, if they don't submit, even though the policies and the regulations are there, the enforcement is weak, very weak.
That's interesting to know that you admit it's weak. In the
Yes.
case of Ghana, Dr. Brima was making a contribution saying that these policies are apparently, in the case of Ghana, it looks very strong, but it's a question of the willpower as to whether they would want to comply or not. And so over to you, Dr. Brima. Dr. Brima, in your position, your current position as the director of Institute of Directors Ghana, can you share with us examples of good governance practice? Examples of good governance practice per your experience. What works best and what doesn't in the case of Ghana? And then perhaps Mrs. Green, you share in the case of the Sierra Leonean context. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, in Ghana, I mean, the overarching law is the Constitution, and within that there are specific clauses dealing with what I would call governance. Also, as far as the business and institutional environment is concerned, you have the Companies Act, and it basically defines what needs to be done and how it should be done, and with, I mean, clear statements of sanctions if they are not done well. If you basically take the Act 992/2019, basically specify the roles and responsibilities of members of the board, and prescribes what sanctions are applicable when there are breaches. And I know that some board members have had issues due to challenges their businesses have gone through, with the reasons being the ineffectiveness of the board. But what has really made some of these acts in Ghana to work are the the sectoral, what I'll call supervisory bodies. If you take the financial sector, the Banking Act basically empowers the Bank of Ghana to carry out specific supervisory activities, look into what I would call key areas of governance. And how have they managed that so far? They have mandated and as it were certified the Institute of Directors Ghana to carry out board evaluations of the major financial institutions, and actually including the smaller ones, on an annual basis, with reports being sent to the Bank of Ghana. And I can assure you that with those, if there are issues of non-compliance, the stick is always down. It's the same as the Insurance Commission, also the same as the Securities Exchange Commission, etc. So what I'm basically saying is that, look, you can have all the laws, and they are there, and I believe that in Ghana and in most member states, they are there. The enforcement institutions or the enforcement tools need to be established, and they need to be given space to operate. In Ghana, Bank of Ghana is given that space. National Insurance Commission is given that space to as it were, manage that. The Registrar of Companies has that space. The Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana has a role to play as far as enforcement of some of the issues of financial discipline. That is not to say that it is all hunky-dory, because if it was, most of the state-owned enterprises would not be making losses. That is precisely why, and the tone at the top, as my sister from Sierra Leone mentioned, that's the reason why the president's the first 100 days agenda had a social contract number 26, which looked straight into the state-owned enterprises and came up with clear directives. One, that all the loss-making ones will have to move to break even, with the ultimate objective of moving into making money. And all who fall out of that loop will clearly either be what I would say divested or closed down. And this mandate has been given directly to the State Interest Governance Authority to manage. As one example. Now, I think finally, let me just round it off by saying that because this area is so important and it is actually affecting the performance of state-owned enterprises, government established the State Interest Governance Authority, and their main role is basically to be supervisory. And I believe that, as far as that area is concerned, we're beginning to see results, but I don't think we're where we should be as far as their supervisory role is concerned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. And so, Mrs. Green, I saw you nodding your head to some of the comments that Dr. Bramwell has said, and it makes me understand that you can relate to what he's saying. So, in the case of Sierra Leone, how does it look like? How does the landscape look like?
I was nodding because a lot of what he was saying applies to Sierra Leone. But the difference between Sierra Leone and Ghana is that we don't enforce or make sure that regulations are adhered to. We don't have strong enforcement bodies. But having said that, the Bank of Sierra Leone, which is the central bank, published its own corporate governance code for banks and financial institutions, and that is working perfectly because they enforce any breaches. They make sure that if you breach, because they examine, they visit, they have their own enforcement team within the bank that visits all the banking institutions, the financial houses, and make sure that they comply with the regulations. And those who fail get penalized. But so if you don't want to be penalized, what's your option? You comply. They are strong in enforcing their regulation. Unfortunately, I can't say that for other um, institutions because, like, take for instance the Corporate Affairs Commission, which is like the where you register of companies. Initially, it was able to enforce, like, if companies didn't submit their audit reports, their annual reports, it had a way of enforcing it to make sure that they complied. But in the last year or two, that body has now gone under the president's office and it seems to have, well, I won't say vanished. It's there, but we don't know what happened to it. But it's under the president's office. So we don't know how effective they are because you can't get any information. Even for their day-to-day practice, it's difficult for them. Enforcement is something which is very vital. I think like the professional bodies like Institute of Chartered Accountants, the Bankers Association, the lawyers, even the dentists and medical practice, they try because they have their own regulations and they try to make sure that members adhere to the regulations. If not, the tendency is that you'll be struck off. And if you've spent years studying for something and then find out that because of some foolishness or whatever, you can't practice what you've trained to, you would want that. So I think that encourages members in those different bodies to adhere to regulations. When it comes to parastatals, which is government-owned entities, well, that's a different story altogether. I'm not even sure that they have a regulatory body for all parastatals. So usually it's just the director, the chairman in particular is the one that if he's a good chairman, he will try to ensure that things are done properly. But then most of these people are political appointees and they don't subscribe to corporate governance rules or principles, even if it's not corporate governance rules, just ordinary principles and practices of doing a business, of running a business. While government bodies, parastatals, are not treated as if they are a business. It's a government. So, well, if it's the government, why should you go about doing business principles? Why should you go about trying to make money? That's not what you're there for. So all those things have to change for us in Sierra Leone for us to see significant improvement. We're behind Ghana.
No, well, but not lost. I think some years ago, yeah, I think some years ago, Ghana was also at the same stage. So we're having this discussion because we believe that together we could do something. Ghana and together Beck Africa and IOD Ghana can also share their expertise and work around some trainings and in the area of governance with IOD, Sierra Leone, and so it's a work in progress. So we would hopefully try to fix it. Yeah. Having said that, we will go for a short commercial break, a breather, and then after that we continue our discussion. And this time around, we'll be talking about institutional memory. Institutional memory.
You know, Senya, before we go for the break, let me just make these two quick points. That the first one is about naming and shaming. You would realize that to enforce the rules in Ghana, every year, the Office of the Registrar of Companies publish the list of defaulting companies that have not filed their returns, naming and shaming, with penalties. The the Ghana Revenue Authority does the same thing. And every single default, for example, if you fail to pay your tax for a particular line item, say for a year, you would probably have a penalty that is equal to 5-6 times the amount that you failed to pay. And with an option for a foreclosure on you, and basically that's it. So things are beginning to move up, but we still have gaps. Thank you.
Great. So
Yes, I'll just add to that yes, we have. It's not as if we don't have rules and regulations. Our problem is the enforcement.
Yes.
Yes, it's the enforcement.
Yeah.
We do have
Yes.
rules and regulations. The enforcement is what is lacking very much.
Yes.
Good.
And I
So
dare say that it's the same for the rest of Africa. That every African country, you have all the rules, you've got all the policies, but people just look outside the window when it comes to enforcing them.
Yeah.
But the tone at the top is what will drive this. And I think that is a fresh wind of change that we are experiencing in Ghana.
Okay.
The tone is clear and uncompromising.
So let's go for a breather, and then viewers, you can always share your comments on our social media platforms, Back Africa, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and then I would gladly read your questions and your comments to the panelists. Thank you. Let's go for a break.
How many minutes?
It will just be less than 2 minutes.
As the corporate sector evolves, Burka Africa remains committed to cultivating world-class thought leaders and providing innovative, human-centered solutions that shape a prosperous future for African governments and businesses. About Burka Africa. Burka Africa is a platform that houses expert consultants from across the African sub-region that provide strategic sustainable leadership, organizational development, corporate governance, coaching, and ESG advisory services to businesses and African governments. Burka's strategic thrust is to strengthen strategic alignment for Africa's development by bridging the gap between governments, businesses, and industry experts for leadership and business solutions, serving as a center for excellence and transformative leadership insights in Africa. The consortium is dedicated to shaping ethical, visionary, productive, and sustainable businesses and leadership across Africa. Through advisory, training, and coaching, Burka supports executives, managers, and organizations in achieving excellence, growth, and sustainable impact. Visit our website www.burkafrica.com for more information.
Great. So we are back, and our conversation is still on how to build institutions that outlast leaders. And we've been having a great conversation, experience, and thoughtful insight into how governance, the culture of governance, can make or make a whole institution. With us from Accra, Ghana, Dr. Brima, and also the CEO of Institute of Directors Ghana, as well as Mrs. Amy Green from Sierra Leone, the CEO of Institute of Directors Sierra Leone. These personalities have been sharing insights as to from their terrain, from their homegrown solutions to some of these practices that can, as I said, can unmake or make great institutions. So, if our panelists are ready, we will be talking about institutional memory. Okay, and what role does institutional memory play in preserving organizational values across leadership changes? In other words, how can a change in leadership um, lead to the preservation of the institution's memory? So, any one of you can have that a take on that. Perhaps we could either try Mrs. Green. If you are ready, you could let us have your contribution on that institutional memory. As we wait for Mrs. Green, viewers and listeners, you can also put in your comments, your suggestions, your questions as well through Becca Africa on YouTube, Becca Africa social platforms on YouTube, Facebook, and also on LinkedIn, WhatsApp as well. So Becca Africa, we are into coaching, into leadership, governance strategy, and then we are here. We also help. We are into youth development programs as well. And so back to our panelists, back to our guest. Institutional memory. How important is it in the preservation of an organization's structure?
Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Um, um, Institutional memory, of course, it's a no-brainer. It's important. It's vital. It's crucial. But it's one of our weaknesses here in Sierra Leone, and we're trying to make this a great opportunity to develop institutional memory, develop and maintain institutional memory. We realize that we have to enforce proper handover processes because outgoing leaders need to be able to prepare reports, and the incoming ones must undergo structured orientation. Boards should insist on knowledge management and systems that capture policies, projects, lessons learned. Even simple practice like taking minutes on a regular basis and making sure that the minutes are agreed and archived. They are part of the institution's memory because in the future, someone can look it up and say, oh, this is what happened at this particular time, and this is how it was sorted. So that all contributes. Um, some of our leaders, and when I say leaders, I mean leaders of institutions, we don't take this as, we don't treat it as important. There's a culture in Sierra Leone that if I'm not there, what's the point in me telling other people what I know? It's personal, but it shouldn't be personal. We should be thinking of the institution, and if we think of the institution, how whatever happens to it affects our country. And anything that isn't good for our country isn't good for us as individuals. So our mindset has to change from encouraging individualism into a culture of documentation and accountability so that institutions can retain their identity and value beyond individual leaders. So obviously, if we have proper documentation and stuff, we need to archive it. As I said earlier, it will serve as reference points for the future. Also, if we train more directors, we hope, if they are trained, they should be able to improve whatever institution they're in, and they should be able to undertake reforms, because if they're trained, they should be able to see the gaps in the institution and undertake reforms, which eventually strengthens the way things are done and generally improves the institution. And once the institution is improved and we have our records documented, we have our archiving for future reference, that will take the institution forward, because then it doesn't have to rely on Mrs. Green. And if Mrs. Green is in there, nobody knows what to do. This is something we need to move away from. If things are done properly, like I said earlier, minutes of meetings, all the policies which boards have enacted, properly documented, when someone new comes in, it's all there to follow up. You can read it and understand what has gone on in the past and see how you can make improvements, not just discard it, which is another problem.
Okay, great.
So
That's a good one. So, Dr. Brahma, you take your shot on this this topic, and then we have our final parting words from each of you.
Okay. For me, the Mrs. Green started the discussion on this on a very interesting note. It's a no-brainer. It is critical. It's a must-have. And end of story. If we didn't have history, if we didn't have records of history, we would never have known what happened in the First World War and the Second World War.
exactly.
Institutional memory and value transfer is about that. It's for us to know what went wrong in the past, what went well, so we leverage on that and set in motion strategies and plans to deal with what went wrong. And indeed, for accountability. My brother, you will remember that successive governments in this country have and continue to, as it were, go back into our recording system, pull out past transactions, and raise questions, get the state security apparatus to drill down and try and establish if things were done right. Without institutional memory, without value transfer, there's a problem. And indeed, if institutional memory depends on individuals, a disaster, because we're all mortal. And therefore, it is about having more than individuals carrying the institutional memory. Having said that, I would basically be saying that this area is so critical that it needs to be prioritized, and especially with a documentation and archiving system put in place, mostly digital. Today you have cloud. Yeah. Today, the technology is so advanced. Like in Ghana, we have the GIFMIS. Before, there wasn't GIFMIS, and things were stored manually, and therefore, if anybody wanted, he could just go and create some arson there. Make it a crime scene and touch it, and all the records are gone. So we need to prioritize documentation and archiving, and we need to go deeper. No compromise on that, and we need to mandate proper handover. People don't hand over properly. They just find excuses, they run away, and whatever critical documents or critical information they have, they don't actually leave them behind. And if it is even electronic, they take steps to eliminate them before they leave. That must be done. Now, in terms of the board, because that is where, because the board is, that's the oversight organization. That's the strategy orientation kind of organization. And therefore, the roles of the corporate secretaries, the board secretaries, etc., have to be strengthened, because they are going to be, as it were, the vehicles that will preserve the institutional records. Training at all levels, strengthening monitoring and evaluation, and more importantly here, the board, who watches the watchman, because the board is the oversight. So who is watching him? And that's where board evaluation is important. That's where I am happy that the Bank of Ghana is insisting and is following through and is sanctioning when that is not done. And of course, once people know that information once created cannot be erased, and that there's an accountability system, that in itself will act as a conscience check. Am I doing it right? Is it okay? Will I not be caught? And it goes on like that. But at the end of the day, we also have to highlight success stories where institutional values are endured despite leadership turnover. We need to recognize that. And I know that some of the recent changes in Ghana, across political lines, I mean, one CEO that I know actually invited his successor to his office after he had handed over. They had conversation. He invited him a number of times, invited the previous board chair. Now, these are stories that should become an integral part of our life. After all, the incoming CEO did not appoint himself. There's nothing like sour grapes or nuts to grind with him. So basically, for me, these are some of the key things we need to do, bearing in mind, reverting to Mrs. Green's statement, it's a no-brainer. It is crucial. It's absolutely important. It's a must-have. Thank you.
So, well said, Doc. Institutional memory documentation is a no-brainer. It's something that we should all, public or private, be intentional about keeping. So, final words to you, Mrs. Green. Final words.
I'll make it quick. For us here in Sierra Leone, we're at the learning stage. We're learning that vision alone is not enough. Institutions are meant to outlast leaders. And this can only be done when we deliberately invest in systems, governance frameworks, and values. Hence, the Institute of Directors is committed to ensuring and strengthening corporate governance principles and practices. Capacity building is a given in all this. It embraces change and empowers growth. True legacy is measured not by what a leader personally leaves behind, but by what the institution continues to deliver long after that leader has left. Our challenge and our opportunity is to make sure that in Sierra Leone, the vision survives the visionary and the system outlasts the individual. Succession plans are rendered useless when the successor has a free hand to showcase themselves. But then in this process, they end up exhibiting their lack of knowledge, lack of integrity, and exposing their individual self-serving traits with little or no supervision. Political objectives create room for hexagonal pegs in round holes. It won't fit. So we know that the result is little or no consequences for lack of accountability, non-performance, and complete mismanagement. It is a proven fact that when compliance functions well and it's adhered to, the opportunity for acts of for acts which result in, among others, outright and blatant corruption is eliminated. So in failure, we're looking to emphasizing, strengthening our reforms, our practices, our principles, our supervision, because all that has to work together. It can't be isolated. It has to be complete for things to go the way we want or the way we wish. Thank you.
Dr. Senyo, are you on? Dr. Senyo? Ramos, call Dr. Senyo and see. It looks like he's not on. So how's Sally on? Is this green?
Yes, I'm here.
How's Sally on?
Where Sierra is still there.
I have to visit one of these days.
Yes, you should.
Yes.
You should. Have you ever been there before?
Oh, a million times. You know, I worked for
Okay.
ECOWAS, so I've been there a million times. So, yeah, so I'm missing the cassava leaf.
You should have told me. If I'd known that, I would have taken some for you when I went to Ghana a few months ago. When was it? In July.
You see, and indeed, you could have delivered it on this platform as well.
Oh, yeah, you see, I mean, with everything digital these days, I don't want to stop that happening.
Yeah, you just be eating it and wetting my appetite. We're trying to get Dr. Senyo. We're trying to get Dr. Senyo back.
Where is he gone?
Maybe he's having some internet challenges.
Oh, like I did. Like I did for a good part of the program. I missed out on it. Um, I think this is something that we should be having on a regular basis, really, because it we learn from each other,
Yes.
and for us, for me in particular, I take courage when I hear all the countries have been through or are going through the same challenges that we're going through in Sierra Leone. I take good comfort from that, because otherwise it feels as if you are the only one, and you're not doing anything to uplift your country.
Mm. You know, I believe the audience are listening, so maybe let me just give my summary. So when he comes, we close.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, from my side, I think an excellent dialogue. Couple of headline statements from me. One being experience from Unilever, and one message is very clear that if you don't develop your successor, you will stay where you are. And that's it. You will not move on. If you don't develop your successor and you are at the pinnacle of the organization, we will bring somebody from another Unilever company globally